Hey guys, this is Meeker. I'm back with another video. This is around the PTR. This is going to be a Firestaff guide. I don't claim to be like a complete expert on Firestaff, but after testing for a day and a half, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what feels good. The biggest change with Firestaff, I believe, is the new ultimate makes Firestaff very interesting because you can animation cancel it and kind of combo it in a couple of ways to really kind of pump up the damage of Firestaff and make it feel a lot more fluid when you're going for a burst combo. Other than that, let's get right into it. So, going over the perks. So I think there are two main classes of fire staff. I have them in titles here, but one of them I think is a nuker sort of oriented build. This is like what you typically would see from other patches. And then the new thing that's kind of come around, I think, is like a smolder related build, aka like Flamethrower. I'm calling it Smolder Kitten, so you guys remember it. But this is literally just a build that is designed to set up the nuker build, and along with the nuker build, it will pump out pretty decent damage while also being able to live fairly well. I wouldn't say it's nearly as tanky as other tank builds, but it does apply consistent pressure, and I don't think it's a meme anymore, because when it comes down to Fire Staff itself, when due to the strike of the match from Pillar of Fire, those smolder stacks are really, really important. And if you have a person that can keep those up consistently on top of on people who your fire staffs are targeting, it will just result in that player basically getting blown up instantly. I don't think Firestaff's best ability is Fireball anymore. I think it is Pillar of Fire, but I don't think you could run Pillar of Fire on every single class when you play this. I think there's a way to with the kind of more spreading the Smolder build, but it feels a little bit better to me to not do that at the moment, but I could be wrong about that. So, uh, getting into the Nuker build, this one I think will definitely be played. On the Fire Staff itself, this is very typical to last patch. Vicious, you want attunement, those are two perk, and then your third perk is Keenly Empower. Empowering Fireball used to be really good. It has some conditional now where it has to be a target above 50% HP, which makes the combo a little bit interesting because you kind of want to light attack into Fireball into ult cancel into the actual strike of the match with Pillar of Fire now to get the highest burst that I've seen, and then you can end out all with like a heavy attacks or whatever you want to do after. It doesn't really matter. But this keenly empowered should be able to proc consistently, and I'm like, once you get that keenly empowered to proc, you have your rune down. This really starts to do a lot of damage. Your secondary, you have a lot of options. I listed like basically three Ice Gauntlet variants. I think the Ice Gauntlet variant tends to be better than the Blunderbuss. I think there's also an option to go Void Gauntlet, but I don't think Void Gauntlet's as good in like a light setup. Uh, Blunderbuss did also just receive a damage nerf that is unknown to be how much. I would tend to, even before that kind of went out, I wanted to lean to Ice Gauntlet. The main reason why I wanted to lean to Ice Gauntlet is I think people are going to be running Ellie Aversion, and Ice Gauntlet, Ice Spike gets around Ellie Aversion and has pretty good damage. It's not like insane, but I wouldn't say it's bad. Like it could hit for like 5k or in like light. If you like really like play to it, you could hit for 6k. So it's not like bad damage at all. It's just not super easy to hit. That would be like the first thing I would say to go for. Blunderbuss is fine if you want to run that as well. There's also a util Ice Gauntlet build I put on here, and then a pylon related one. The exhaustive exploitation is the only kind of weird thing I threw on there, but that's just a way to play for pylon. This would just be a pylon hits like a truck kind of build, where pylon would actually be hitting for like 2k a pop, so you could kind of peel healers in that regard, kind of peel yourself and do good damage. On your ult for the other one, I'd say go Brutal Firestorm. Do 5 Resil, 5 Refreshing, so probably that Refreshing over the Aversion in my opinion. Then do Weapon Perks and then do LE Aversion for the remaining slots. The only reason why I say Prow Refreshing over is because I think this is going to be like your kind of light BB oriented build of this next patch, where you want to be playing safe and you are going to be the one doing all the damage, and you want to be using those combos as much as you can. There is a world maybe where people try to drop their con even more, and then in that world you'd want to go 5 LE version, but I think if you're at 150 con, you can probably get away with this. Under Amulet, this is the other kind of weird part. I think you want Shirking and Power over what's typically run there, so I think you want Champion's Amulet, and you want Champion's Ring. The Champion's Ring with a Keen will actually let the Fire Staff have a base like 29% critical, which ends up being pretty good damage. They did change how crit damage and crit rate works, so your crits will hit a little bit less than they did on live, but you still have really good crit. With this setup, you would have 29% crit. There is the option of going keen on Firestaff and they'd be up to 40% crit. I don't think it's generally worth it. It is noteworthy that every hit that doesn't crit will increase your crit chance by 8% versus your total percent. So last patch, if you had 40% crit and you missed one crit, your next chance should be 80% according to what they have said, and that's on live. So that was kind of stupid, but it's no longer that way anymore. So it's still really, really good though, and you should be able to crit very, very often with your abilities. And when you do crit, you get that vicious proc, you get that attunement proc. If you can time this with like the keenly empowered and the rune, it's just like kind of a good night to someone build. Doesn't matter if they're warded to you or not. In terms of everything else, earring, I think you want purifying toast because it can get rid of smolder. It can also get rid of weaken. I think it's worth running the focus potions on this build specifically too to try to get rid of those debuffs that you have, because that can actually proc purifying toast and is like a decent source of mana regen, which you kind of do feel in this build. Like you need a little bit more mana regen. I don't have regen pots being consistently popped though, and I'm not popping mana food, so I imagine it will be fine in like an actual setup. And then in terms of like weapon perks that you're looking for, empowering fireball I think is really, really good. Unending thaw I think is really good for this setup in particular, especially for running ice spike, because then you can go that unending thaw into heavy. You'll still have that ultimate chill to fall back on, and then you can pop people with that. Deadly frost I don't think is ever bad. Plague splitting grenade is not bad if you're on BB, and exhaustive netshot is really, really good if you're on BB. In terms of what that tree would look like, this is what I have for the Firestaff tree. This is pretty standard from other patches. Arson's advantage is kind of interesting to go for. I don't think it's generally worth going for. The rest of this is pretty standard. In terms of BB, this would be the BB build that I want to say is best with this build on PTR. A lot of people like to go for double down. The problem I have with going for double down is you end up with so many dead perks. Like you have to take 3 dead perks for this basically. I guess Buckshot's not completely a dead perk, but it's like it doesn't feel super good to me. I would rather get to apparatus, which is just super, super broken. But that's kind of a personal preference. I think both these trees are pretty good. In terms of ice spike, it's pretty standard. I think you actually want to go for the cold reach now, because that will increase your basic attack, so you can land that heavy. With heavy you'll do a bit more, and then you can go for the big spike. And spike is not affected by LA aversion, which is the main reason why it seems kind of interesting. This is what I have for ice pylon. I took off frozen touch because I don't think melees will be as present next meta, especially where you're going to be playing, and I put on empowering frost, and the rest is pretty standard. This is a util ice gauntlet setup that you could run as well. This is like the standard one that's being run on this patch. Or on live. And then getting to, oh, I do have one clip to show for like why I think you want that alt. Let me get into that here. So that's the wrong clip. I believe this is the one. Yeah, so let me pull it over here. So the base idea behind this is you want to try to use your ult to animation cancel things. So what I was doing was light attack into fireball into that ult into the actual pillar, and then that combos really well. I timed the roll a little bit bad, and then you land the ice spike after. That should finish most targets off. But that's like the base idea of why you want that ult, because you can kind of animation cancel, and it lets you do a little bit more burst damage. In terms of the other build, which is probably the more funny build that's kind of coming around this patch, the idea behind these two would be these builds like perhaps like work together. The nuker is trying to follow where the flamethrower is going, because when the nuker hits what the flamethrower is hitting, they're really going to hit really hard. And the flamethrower is kind of covered in that sense from the nuker. I think the flamethrower could play on point. I think the flamethrower could also play off of point. I think it's just like a preference thing there between medium and heavy. Firestaff, I don't think the perks matter around here a ton. I just get attunement keenly empowered, and I'd honestly even consider like a weapon perk at that point. But I think vicious is fine too as well. You're not going to be doing too much damage with this setup. It's more of a burn over time setup, so I don't think you have to be really picky about the Firestaff. A Blunderbuss, I think you could run that. I think Ice Gauntlet is best, and you run the util setup. VG I think is also interesting if you're running in heavy. Like if you run heavy 300 con, I think you could run this Firestaff with Void Blade, because the Void Blade with what is up right now, the Rens will actually be old Rens, so they're really, really impactful and will really increase your Firestaff's damage. And then you can kind of set them up with screams, kind of chase someone down. Once you get the Smolder stacks on someone, they'll just basically get deleted over time. Your ult, I would still go the Stalwart, or I'd go Firestorm. The stalwart one I think is best for this one. This is like one where you'd want to try to aim it back towards your army. This will cleanse all the dot effects, so this will get rid of Smolder and basically prevent people on your team from getting blown up, and you'll still do decent damage to their team. On your gear for this one, I think you prioritize aversion. You still go 5 resil. You have however many weapon perks you want, and then I would run flame conditioning or refreshing. I tend to lean towards flame conditioning with this one in particular, but I think refreshing could work as well. I do health stam and then some kind of ward for your ring or for your amulet. So slash ward was last patch. This patch might be fire. It's kind of preference there. On your ring, I would do invig fire damage burning if you're in medium, or hearty if you're in heavy. Burning should work with the smolder effect, so that's just like another way to extend those durations and make people really bleed. It is also noteworthy that when you go for that right click on this ability, the one that's going to cause people to explode, this is basically taking all those burning stacks and condensing them into one hit. So when you have burning that extends it by 33%, that 33% is getting added to backdraft, and backdraft is affected by empowers. So if you can figure out a way to get into a power, so if you run empowering incinerate and then you go for a backdraft, that is going to combo for a lot of damage, especially with all the burning, because you get all the burning on someone, you hit them with the backdraft, that's going to detonate it, and they're just going to get cooked. So that would be the base combo with that. In terms on earring, I think you just kind of go purifying toast again, because I think you want to try to get rid of the smolder stacks, but I don't think it's bad to run like regenerating with the setup either. Good weapon perks, unending thaw I don't think is bad. Deadly frost I don't think is bad. I would personally prioritize accelerating flamethrower and empowering incinerate though with this one, and then I'll show you guys the tree that I came up with. This is a tree that I had with it. It was pretty boring. I think you could maybe go trial by fire and even cut fire restoration if you didn't like to do the heavy attacks at all. I just like to use heavy attacks. But something like this, I don't think is bad. I don't if you're not playing near melees, then you can drop heated up. But I'm just like looking at like how could I get Smolder to like work on people. I guess this fortify doesn't really do that much either, so you could even cut that and go trial by fire. Trial by fire doesn't really do a ton, but it's like it's something that does a little bit more, and it got buffed significantly. So, I mean, this tree will probably get played with a lot. I kind of just went pretty basic, went on the right tree. I think you could like try to get to Singe and like some of the things on the left, but I'm guessing that this is like more of a just play for flamethrower kind of vibe. And then you go for burnout into incinerate, and then you kind of chill for a second, and then you go back to flamethrower kind of thing. And you maybe do the backdraft after you go for incinerate. That's kind of depending if people are low enough. If you see your fire staff get someone low, then you can go for the backdraft play to finish someone off with your heavy attack. In terms of like how that would look like, I have a clip here where you can cancel that incinerate into the firestorm, and then you can kind of go for whatever you want after that. But that's like the base idea behind why firestorm I think is good in these setups, is because you can go for a really long animation like this, and then you can just cancel it, get the damage off, and then do a little bit more burst. So that's why I prefer that over the empower, but I know some people will prefer the detonate kind of thing. But that's like the base idea behind that. And I went over everything else when it comes to this. This is what empowering incinerate looks like, in case you haven't like seen that before. But basically, you do more damage with your incinerate. The pillar perk is pretty good. I would probably consider running that as well on the fire staffs, but I wouldn't run it on the fire staff. I'd run it on armor. Uh, but especially on the nuker one, that pillar perk looks pretty solid. The empowering fireball is not bad. The problem with empowering fireball is the 50%. So you have to have some over 50% health. And what you would do before is you'd go for the heavy into pillar into fireball, but if you go for that now, they'll be below 50%, so you won't actually get the empower and empowering fireball, so it makes it a little bit more awkward, and I think it's better to use it early, and then try to animation cancel with your ultimate. So I don't think going for those like kind of pylon cheese ultimate setups is bad with this build, because the ultimate allows you to animation cancel and lets you do more burst. I know some people don't like the whole ultimate concept of you get ult fast, you do things with your ultimate, but that's the base idea why with this build. Or you could go Ice Pylon and just frag out with that, because that looks really, really fun. So this will be like a really fun build. I think both these builds will be really, really strong next patch in terms of like being a flamethrower oriented build, being an actual like typical fire staff oriented build. I think both of them look solid. I don't exactly know like where they fit in terms of like a meta spot, but I imagine it'll be in setups. Was an idea I was throwing around with someone last night. It was like maybe you have like a fire staff oriented group that's like the actual burst ones, and you need to put the flamethrowers in normal groups, and then your fire staffs are your AoE fire staffs are basically looking to nuke those clumps that the flamethrowers are in, or something like that. Or maybe you put them in the same group and you just kind of follow what the flamethrower's doing. Who also could run a void blade, and then you kind of switch between them back and forth, and you just basically try to set people up to get one shot by your fire staff. It is also noteworthy that you like really want to try to maximize your empower on both these setups. Rune of Helios is like a really good way to get empower. You have some other sources of passing power. That's why I recommended the shirking uh, empowerment too, because that's 16% empower. That's really impactful, and I think that will be fairly consistent to proc next patch. So yeah, just look to maximize your power, do your damage, play for your combos. Your empowering fireball, the main thing is you just don't want to throw it at the beginning. Pillar of Fire is your main source of like damage with this. Burnout is cool. I don't think it does a ton, but it's like it looks really cool. It's really fun to use. And then don't be surprised if you just get one shot from backdraft, and backdraft is like legitimately scary from a flamethrower perspective. Like if you stack burning and you have kindle, and then you have accelerating flamethrower, which also makes it so that burning lasts longer. It's like that gets really scary at that point, because all that like long duration over time damage is just gonna get completely thrown together with backdraft, and it's just like kind of a good night situation where you can just get instantly blown up. But yeah, that's what I have for this one. Let me know what you guys think. If you have some other ideas, let me know. But this is like the base idea of like what I came with Firestaff, and I'll see you guys in the next one.